Congratulations and welcome to the Cuisinart family of product owners who have discovered how to savor the good life right at home with family and friends. Hi, my name is Mary Rogers. I'm one of the many people at Cuisinart who have worked on bringing you our new Premier Series Cuisinart PowerPrep Plus food processor. You may not know this. Cuisinart introduced the original food processor to the consumer kitchen over 25 years ago. Ever since, we've been making it better. Over the years, we've added more models, more accessories, and more functions. Today, with the introduction of the Premier Series food processor, Cuisinart brings a new look and new capabilities to food processing. More streamlined with a convenient solid-state touchpad and automatic dough feature, it's the next step in the cooking revolution we started so many years ago. During the next 30 minutes, we will show you how to get the most from your PowerPrep Plus food processor. First, we will introduce you to all the parts and accessories that come with the PowerPrep Plus. Then we will review how easy it is to assemble and use your food processor. Then we will see time-saving tips and special techniques that will make food preparation part of the fun of entertaining friends and family. Bill Brewa, chef instructor from the Culinary Institute of America, will show you step-by-step several of our favorite recipes that are included in your recipe and instruction booklet. To familiarize you with the brand new automatic dough feature, bread expert Charlie Vanover will demonstrate how to make foolproof pizza dough and artisan-style bread. So get comfortable and get ready to see just how easy it's going to be to savor the good life. Let's take a look at what came with your new Premium Series PowerPrep Plus food processor. Before unpacking, take a moment to look at the top unpacking instructions printed on the top carton flap. Place the instruction guide and your recipe book somewhere handy. You'll find answers to most of your questions in these two booklets. Remember when unpacking that our blades and discs are precision stainless steel cutting tools with extremely sharp cutting edges. Always hold the chopping blade and the dough blade by the white hubs. The shredding and slicing discs should be held by the outer rims only. Keep your fingers away from the cutting edges. Assembling your new food processor is easy, and once it's put together, you'll find it takes up very little counter space. You may be glad to know that all the accessories from the traditional Cuisinart 14-cup food processors are compatible with this new model. Now, let's put this together. Start with the newly redesigned motor base. It houses a powerful induction motor that won't bog down, even when mixing very heavy doughs. Touchpad controls feature pulse on and off, as well as a brand new automatic dough control. They operate with the touch of a fingertip and wipe clean in seconds. The 14-cup Lexan work bowl is extremely durable, resistant to both hot and cold temperatures, and goes right into the dishwasher for easy cleanup. Place the work bowl onto the motor base with the handle facing the front and positioned just to the left of the center of the unit. Turn it counterclockwise until you hear it click into place. Let's look at that again from the side. Notice how it clicks into place. Next, pick up the chopping blade, holding it carefully by the hub. Place it onto the shaft using the icon to properly line it up. The dough blade is placed onto the shaft in the same manner as the chopping blade. Designed for use with the new automatic dough control exclusive to the PowerPrep Plus food processor, it lets you create perfect bread dough, pizza dough, and more. We'll show you exactly how to do it later in the tape. To attach the slicing or shredding disc, place the stem onto the upturned disc using the symbols to align it properly. Then push the stem down and turn it clockwise to snap it into place. To use either disc, simply place the stem onto the shaft in the work bowl. Your food processor came with our newly redesigned cover. These instructions for use apply to either style. Before placing the cover onto the work bowl, remove the pusher assembly from the feed tube. Now, place the cover onto the work bowl with the feed tube just to the left of the work bowl handle and turn it slightly counterclockwise to lock it into place. Notice the size of the feed tube. It's over 2.5 times larger than any on the market. To activate the interlock mechanism on the PowerPrep Plus, simply insert the pusher assembly into the feed tube, making sure to place the metal guide into the opening on the cover before dropping the assembly into place. You'll notice that the pusher assembly has a small cylindrical insert. This is a small food pusher. It can be turned clockwise and removed when adding small items or liquids, even during the processing cycle. That's all there is to it. As soon as you plug it into the electrical outlet, your PowerPrep Plus food processor will be ready to go to work for you. Now we're going to show you a few basics. These are the techniques that are going to change your life in the kitchen. Let's see what you can do with the extremely versatile chopping blade. It's indispensable when it comes to chopping parsley, grinding nearly any kind of meat, chopping onions, nuts, or making breadcrumbs. Use the pulse button to control the texture of whatever you're processing. Just press and release the pulse at intervals of 1 second or less to get just the consistency you want. Now let's take a look at what the slicing disc can do. Simply insert the disc. Place selected items into the feed tube and insert the pusher assembly. Press the pulse control while applying gentle pressure to guide the food through the tube. Look how quickly you can make beautiful slices of lemon, cucumbers, peppers, or potatoes. The shredding disc is a real time saver too. Again, insert the appropriate disc. Place selected items into the feed tube and insert the pusher assembly. Use the on button when shredding or slicing large quantities of food. Look how quickly you can shred cheese, cabbage, and carrots. Be sure to turn the machine off when you finish processing. You can make perfect slices of small items, like cucumbers, by removing the small food pusher from the feed tube, inserting the cucumber and applying pressure. It only takes a few seconds. Remember, this feed tube is large enough to let you slice whole fruits and vegetables too. Now that you know how to assemble and use your new food processor, we have some great recipes to show you, all of which you can find in your PowerPrep Plus recipe booklet. Enjoy!
Okay, let's get started with a fresh tomato and corn salsa. This is a really great after-school treat and an impromptu sauce that goes wonderfully with a piece of chicken or fish from the grill. Before you begin, it's always a great idea to get your ingredients laid out. And if anything needs to be cut up, now's the time to do it. A good rule of thumb is 1-inch pieces for anything that needs to go into the food processor. So, let's begin. I've got an onion here. That goes into the food processor. I have a jalapeno pepper. Now, I've cleaned this of the ribs and the seeds, and that's important because most of the heat is in the ribs and the seeds. I'll add that, but make sure that you don't rub your eyes, because if you do, chances are you won't be able to finish watching this video until tomorrow. And now for the cilantro. Fresh cilantro goes in. I lock the lid into place, engage the pusher unit, and we're ready to process. Press and hold the pulse button for about 5 seconds. There we are. Now, I'm going to open it up. I think it's a good idea to always scrape down the sides of the work bowl and press all the ingredients to the bottom. Okay, now we're going to add the tomatoes to the food processor. And we're going to season this with a couple of tablespoons of fresh lime juice. There we are. This time we're going to press the pulse button 4 or 5 times. There we are. The beauty of this clear work bowl is that you can monitor the texture of your salsa while the food processor does the work. The final ingredients are going to be added now. I've got fresh corn, and if you can't find fresh corn, I think that frozen corn is probably a good substitute. We'll add that, and then I'm going to season it with just a little bit of salt. I'm going to pulse the food processor once just to combine the ingredients, but I don't really want to cut the corn up. Okay. We're all set. It's a good idea to let this salsa sit for about an hour to let the flavors mingle. But today, we're going to put it right into a bowl and enjoy it. That is really delicious. When the weather turns warm, cold soups become popular, and there's no cold soup as popular as gazpacho. The color and texture of that soup really help dress up a table when you entertain. All the recipes I'm making today you can find in the instruction and recipe guide that comes with your PowerPrep Plus food processor. Now, I've gotten a head start by laying out some of the vegetables that are going into our gazpacho. For this recipe, we're going to use the chopping blade. I'm going to begin by mincing garlic and jalapenos, and the way to do that is to press the pulse button for about 5 seconds. The reason I want to mince this before any of the other ingredients go in is because I'm not interested in anybody getting a big mouthful of jalapeno. So I'm going to scrape the sides down and push all the ingredients to the bottom of the bowl. Now, the next ingredients to go in are the scallions, also green peppers, and some fresh cilantro. I want to coarse chop these ingredients, and I'm going to press the pulse button on and off maybe 5 or 6 times. Here we go. There we are. Now, at this point, I'm going to take these flavorings out of the bowl and put them into our mixing bowl right here. And then we can carry on with the rest of the recipe. All right. Now, the next ingredient to go in is the chopped tomatoes. And I want to coarsely chop these, so we'll put them in, get the food processor put back together again, and pulse it 5 or 6 times. What we're after is a nice coarse chop on these tomatoes. And that looks just fine to me. You can hold the blade from below to keep it from falling out, and I think it helps make the job just a little bit easier. Now, I'm going to take some tomato juice, add that to the top, and at this point, we're finally going to get to use the slicing disc. I'm going to take the blade out and replace it with a slicing disc. And we're going to use this to slice some cucumber. To use the slicing disc, I'm going to remove the food pusher from the center, and I've taken some cucumbers and sliced them lengthwise. They've been peeled, they've been seeded, and they've been cut in half so that they will fit right into the feed tube. I'm going to turn the food processor on, and we can add those to our gazpacho. At this point, I just want to mix all the ingredients together, and we still have to season this. I think a little bit of lemon juice is appropriate, and we'll season it with salt and pepper, and then finally stir everything together until it's well combined. Now, I would take this, cover it, and refrigerate it until it's ready to be served. And when I serve it, I like to serve it with a big dollop of sour cream and maybe just a sprig of fresh herbs. That's a great soup, and I couldn't have done it without the food processor. I don't think there's a better way to start a summer evening's meal. People are often intimidated by stir fries because of all the slicing and dicing. With the PowerPrep Plus food processor, it really makes stir fries a breeze. Let's get started. I've got some Parmesan cheese, and I'm going to take it and feed it through the feed tube. This is really a terrific way to get freshly grated Parmesan quickly. Okay. Now, there's a trick I want to share with you. If you take your finger and put it up inside the blade, you can hold it in place, and it makes it very, very easy just to empty the bowl. The next ingredients I want to chop up are garlic and ginger, and we'll put those into the bowl as well, and mince them up with the pulse button. Okay, I don't think you could mince garlic and ginger any easier than that. We're going to replace the chopping blade, so I'm going to remove it now, and we'll reserve this minced garlic and ginger until later on. Don't worry about getting the bowl perfectly clean. This is a stir fry, and everything will end up in the same place eventually. Okay, we're going to replace the chopping blade with the slicing disc, and we'll carry on. The first thing we're going to slice are these wonderful red peppers. And I'm going to put them into the wide feed tube, turn the machine on, and there we are. I'm going to put the carrots into the feed tube, laying horizontal. We'll turn the machine on, and all right. Now for the broccoli, I'm going to be using the narrow feed tube. We'll begin with the stalks. Most people throw the stalks away, but what I like to do is take the peel from the outside of the stalks, which tends to be very, very fibrous, and the inside eats very, very nicely. I'll put these into the feed tube, turn it on. Okay, the broccoli stems are all cut up. I'm going to take them out of the food processor and free the bowl so that we can get on with the chicken. Now, the chicken breasts, I've cut them in half crosswise, and I put them into the freezer for just about 20 minutes. What that's done is it's taken the chicken and firmed it up a little bit. Now let me show you a little trick. If you take the tip of a knife and just press it gently into the chicken, it goes in with a little bit of resistance. That's exactly what you want. So, we'll take the chicken breast and put it into the lard feed tube. And those slice just like a dream. All right, I'm going to take this chicken and we're going to marinate it in sesame oil for just a little while. Look at those beautiful slices. If I'd tried to do that by hand, it would have taken forever. It's a good idea, once the chicken is all mixed up, to make sure that your hands and the food processor are thoroughly washed. All right, I have my stir fry pan preheated. A lot of heat is important for a stir fry. I'm going to introduce the chicken to the pan. And we want to cook this just until it becomes opaque. It's easy to overdo it with chicken breast. Now, while this is cooking, I'm going to take just a second to mix together cornstarch and chicken stock. Just a little at a time. I want to make sure that there's no lumps in there. This is going to thicken our sauce a little bit later on. Okay. The smell of this sesame oil is wonderful. You can see the chicken starting to get opaque now. When it's completely opaque, that's your clue that it's done. We'll take it out of the stir-fry pan and reserve it until later. All right, there's our chicken all done. I'm going to take it out of the stir-fry pan and put it onto a warm plate just so it doesn't get overcooked. Now the fun part. The stir-fry pan's back on the heat. I'm going to introduce a little bit of sesame oil and the chopped garlic and ginger. We'll give that a chance to get nicely aromatic before we move on. When you're stir frying, it's a good idea to introduce the ingredients depending on how long they need to cook. So things like carrots, which take longer to cook, go in first, and things like broccoli or peppers, which cook more readily, go into the pan towards the end. As soon as you notice the smell of the garlic, it's time to move on, because if you let it sit for any longer, it's going to begin to burn. I'm going to introduce the broccoli stems and the carrots, and we'll give those about 30 or 45 seconds to cook. It's a good idea to keep them moving in the stir fry so that they don't burn or scorch. Okay, now that these have cooked a little bit, I'm going to add the ingredients that don't need quite so long. The broccoli florets and the sliced red peppers. We'll give these about 30 seconds to cook. Okay, we're ready to add the seasonings to the pan. I've got sherry. We'll add that. That'll help steam these vegetables crisp tender. And we're going to season it with soy sauce as well. Tamari or light soy sauce, if you're watching your salt, are also good alternatives. The chicken can go back into the wok to reheat. We'll stir it together. And the cornstarch and chicken stock overall. Now it's important to let the moisture in this pan come back to a boil. That's your indication that the cornstarch is completely thickened. It shouldn't take more than 20 or 30 seconds. Okay, when the vegetables are nicely cooked, it's time to put our warm pasta right into the pan. I cooked this a little bit earlier. And we'll toss everything together. I'm going to add some cheese at this point too, some of the Parmesan cheese that we grated earlier. That'll help bind this sauce a little bit as well. Maybe about half of our cheese. That smells incredible. Okay, let's eat this while it's fresh. Call the family to the table. Okay, just a little bit more cheese over the top. And I like to garnish it also with some sliced and toasted almonds. There you are. With the fruit processor by your side, there's no reason you can't make a delicious, healthy stir fry like this every night of the week. I've got some beautiful basil here, and we're going to make a batch of pesto. In the PowerPrep Plus food processor, it couldn't be easier. For this recipe, we're going to be using the chopping blade. First step is to cut up some Parmesan cheese, and I think it's important to have the machine running and drop it piece by piece through the feed tube. Okay, that looks good. The next step is to chop the garlic. Now it's a good idea to have the machine running when you add the garlic. In they go. All right. Now, I'm going to scrape the sides down just very briefly. And it's time to add the basil. If you had to chop this by hand, it might take you 15 minutes or so. Let's see how long it takes in the food processor. Just pulse it until you see the basil nicely chopped. Okay. Now, with the machine running, We're going to introduce the oil into this. That looks good. And to finish the pesto, we'll add either pine nuts. In this case, I'm going to be using walnuts, and I think they're interchangeable. A little bit of salt, and the cheese that we grated earlier. It's a good idea not to let it run too long after the cheese has been added. Otherwise, it can warm up and start to melt. Just mix it until it's all combined nicely and the nuts are chopped. I've cooked some pasta ahead of time, and we'll add the nice fresh pesto to it. Okay. Now the pesto can be stored in the refrigerator for 4 or 5 days, but if you do store it for any length of time, make sure to film the top with a little bit of olive oil to keep it from churning color. Today I use spaghetti for this dish, but you can use just about any pasta that you have on hand. And what we made here is a really delicious quick supper or luncheon. Take a look at this. Apple pie is a dessert that people just don't get tired of. This recipe has 2 parts, and I'm going to show you how to make both in the food processor. The first is a flaky pastry, the second the apples with crumb topping. Let's get started. I've got all-purpose flour right here, and I'm going to scrape it into the work bowl. And we're going to mix that with a little bit of baking powder and a little bit of salt. Now let's just run this for maybe 10 seconds just to give the flour, baking powder, and salt a chance to mix together. You might think of this almost like sifting. So in goes the butter and just a little bit of shortening. Now before I mix this, let me just tell you what's going to happen. We're going to mix it until it looks like coarse meal. There shouldn't be any pieces of butter or shortening any larger than about a pea. Here we go. Just pulse it on and off. Okay, let me just show you what this looks like for your own reference. You can see a few pieces of butter in there still, but they're really not very large. Now, when you add the water, add only about half the maximum amount. That way, if you want to add more, you can, but you don't add so much that the dough gets sticky. And again, the water is ice cold, just like the shortening. I want you to take care at this point not to overmix the dough, otherwise it'll be tough. Now, let's take a look. When you reach in, it may look a little bit rough, but grab a handful and see if you can make it stick together when you squeeze it. This feels like it needs just a little more water. Okay, take the blade out and just take care not to cut yourself. I'll set that aside and we'll put it out onto the counter. Gently press it together. This recipe has enough pie dough for 2 pies, so we're going to divide it into half before we refrigerate it. I'll divide it into half, and since we're rolling our pies out round, I'll shape it round from this point on. I have some dough that I made earlier, so we don't have to wait for this to chill, and we can start rolling out this pastry. I'm going to dust the work surface lightly, not too much flour, just enough to keep it from sticking. A little bit on top of the dough, and when you roll, work from the center of the dough to the outside. Turn it occasionally to make sure it's not sticking to the table. And if you feel like you need a little bit more flour, go ahead and add it. Make little corrections along the way so it stays nice and round. And we want to roll it down to about 1/8 of an inch thick. Maybe a little bit more. I'm going to fold it in half and then in half again. I'm going to transfer the dough into the plate and unfold it. And what I like to do, just to build up the edge of the dough a little bit, is to fold the overhanging dough underneath, just like this, all the way around. And we have to choose some sort of a decorative border to put on. Usually what I do is pinch the dough between my fingers, and I'll show you exactly how I do that. A little bit of flour on your fingers, and just like this, all the way around. Okay, we're just about done here. In the crumb topping, we're going to put brown sugar, pecans, some rolled oats, a little bit of flour, and some softened butter. Now the only tricky part here is just to mix this so it looks like coarse crumbs. If you mix it too much, it will all stick together. So we'll pulse it on and off a few times. Just keep your eye on it. Okay, that looks great. I'm going to take it out of the work bowl, and we'll just store it here for the time being. Okay, let's move on to the apples. We're going to change from the chopping blade to the slicing disc. So let's get that in place. I'm going to put the top on, and then in the feed tube, I'm going to start to put in my apples. That's that. Now the apples, for the time being, are going to live right here in the pie shell. Now we're going to make a custard to go over the top of the apples. So put the work bowl back onto the food processor and put the chopping blade in. The custard is a simple custard. Eggs. I've got sour cream, sugar, flour, vanilla, and then something that a lot of people leave out of their pastries, and that is salt. This needs to be mixed together just until it's homogeneous. Okay, that looks good, but I think it's always a great idea to stop and scrape the sides of the bowl, just in case any of the sugar or the eggs got thrown up there and they haven't gotten mixed in. So scrape it all down to the bottom of the work bowl, and then just mix it very, very briefly. Let's put the custard right over the top of the apples. Now, here's a little trick that'll save you some time. To clear off any batter that remains on the blade, I'm just going to put it back on the base for a second and spin the blade, and all the batter will be thrown to the outside. Look how clean that blade is. You couldn't have scraped it that clean. The final step is to put our crumb topping on. I wouldn't press this on, just sprinkle it on nice and light. Make sure that all the apples are covered. All right, there's the topping. Now this pie needs to bake in a preheated 375-degree oven for about 45 minutes to an hour. I'd make a point of checking it after a half an hour just to see how it's coming along. But the result is exactly what you see here. A wonderful, delicious apple crumb pie. There's something about homemade cookies that makes everybody feel great. So let's do an experiment. We'll double the chocolate and see if we can make everybody feel better. Now, we're going to be using the food processor as a mixer in this recipe. To begin, I want to chop up some chocolate into large chunks. So, in goes the white chocolate. And as you can see, I'm using the chopping blade, and now some dark chocolate as well. The lid goes on, and we'll pulse this just to chop the chocolate. Okay, that looks just about right. Now, I'm going to set this aside for now, and we'll carry on with this recipe. And we'll mix together the dry ingredients. First the flour, pecans, baking soda, and a little bit of salt. Let's mix this together just until it's combined. We can set that aside right on top of the chocolate. Next, we'll add white sugar as well as brown sugar and 2 eggs. And this needs to mix until it's nice and creamy. It should take about a minute. Okay, this looks nice and light and foamy. I'm going to take this opportunity just to scrape the sides down quickly. There's the vanilla and butter that's slightly soft. We'll let this mix for 1 more minute until it's nice and creamed. Okay, that looks grand. I'll scrape the sides of the bowl down one last time, and then we'll add the dry ingredients and the chocolate as well. Now we're going to pulse this 5 or 6 times just until it's combined. Okay, the dough looks good. We're going to drop the cookies onto an ungreased baking sheet by heaping tablespoons, I think. And let me show you how that looks quickly. Give the cookies enough room to spread. Okay, there's the last one. Now these cookies need to be baked in a preheated 375-degree oven for 10 to 12 minutes. Pull them out when they're nicely golden brown. When they come out, take them from the cookie sheet, put them onto a cooling rack, and let them sit for maybe 10 minutes to cool. Let me show you what I have here. Double chocolate chunk cookies. These are really delicious. That is double good.
Hi, I'm Charlie Manover. Today I'm going to show you how to make the world's absolute best pizza dough, equivalent to what you could get in Naples and Italy, or better, using this great new food processor. We have this innovative metal dough blade, and we have a dough feature button that has the right speed to make the absolute best dough in the world. So why don't we get started? All right, I'm going to put the flour in the bowl, and what I've done is I've combined the flour and the temperature of the water for 150. It's a combined temperature. Now I'm going to add my salt and my yeast. Close up the machine. Put it in the dough mode. And next we push on. Now I'm going to add my water. My water's added. Now I'm going to count to 45 seconds. It looks looking very good for pizza dough. I'm going to shut the machine off. Disassemble the top. And feel it. I'm going to take the temperature. It's a perfect 78 degrees. Just the perfect temperature for the fermentation process that we're going to go through. I'm going to remove the bowl from the machine, and I'm going to put it into this nice Pyrex glass working bowl. Use plastic or glass. Do not use metal because it'll be affected by the temperature changes. I'm dropping that into here. This is a batch I pre-mixed. Now I'm going to make dough balls. Now have a nice sharp knife like that. That's about 10 ounces, 10 and a half ounces there. There's one ball, another one here. I'm going to put a little flour here. I've got my balls ready to be formed. And now I'm going to make them into nice round balls there so we can have nice round pizzas when we're doing it, although you can stretch them out if you like when you're doing it because that's a lot of fun too. Now I'm going to cover the dough balls with plastic wrap and let them rest for at least 15 minutes, half an hour, that's okay. You want it to be soft and pliable when you're spreading your pizza out. It's 15 minutes later and the dough has risen. It's got nice and soft and pliable. I'm going to start pressing the pizza out like this, and this is what way I like to do it. Take it around the edges like this and stretch it out. And just one more time here. And okay, that's looking good. Now, to start our assembly, we want to make sure we put some cornmeal on the paddle. This is called a paddle or pizza peel. And that's so you can slide the pizza. The worst thing when you're putting the pizza in the oven, if it sticks to that, and I've personally had experiences, and other people have too, of having it stick and then thing dumping in the oven upside down, which is no fun. Okay, I'm going to put that on here. And now we start assembling. This is a pizza margherita, the most popular pizza in the world. Kids love it, adults love it. And to me, that's where all pizza starts, and you can always add more things to it if you like. So I'm going to spread some of our nice tomato sauce on, like this. And then I'm going to have some nice mozzarella cheese. This mozzarella cheese was shredded in the food processor earlier. And here's some nice fresh basil we picked up fresh in the market. You can just shred this with your hands. I like a little more basil. In Naples, they don't like so much basil. They put a small amount on, but I think it has a great flavor. Parmesan cheese on there. Nice grating of fresh pepper gives it a great flavor. And that, and then what I always finish it off with a little extra virgin olive oil, which gives it a wonderful, wonderful, rich flavor. Here we go. Just a little. You don't have to go overboard with that. Now you want to bake the pizza in a very hot oven, say 500 to 550, at about a time of 6 to 8 minutes, and that'll give you fantastic results for a very professional looking pizza. Wow. Look at that, pizza margherita. You couldn't find anything better than that, even in Naples. Now we're going to make simple, delicious baguettes. What people call them Parisian baguettes. 4 ingredients, flour, water, salt, and yeast. In our food processor, it's a very simple method. What we're going to do is weighed everything out, measured everything. We're ready to roll. I'm now putting the flour in the bowl, my salt, my yeast, and I'm going to cover my bowl up, put the top on, very easy to do, and I'm going to go onto my dough button and get the food processor started, and now I'm going to pour my water in, and I'm going to time it for 45 seconds. It's looking very good. After you mix dough in this method, you really get a feel for if it's going to be a perfect mix or not, and I can just tell by this that it's going to be absolutely perfect. Now we're at the end of the process, and my dough is just about ready. It's 45 seconds. I'm going to shut the machine off, and I'm going to take the top off. I'm going to check my dough. It's perfect. Looks like 78, 79 degrees. That's within our parameter. We'll drop the dough out like this. Be careful when you're doing this. Make sure you don't cut your fingers. Although the dough blade's not all that sharp, but nevertheless, caution is advised. Now we've got our dough ball here. I'm going to put it in a nice glass bowl here. Use glass or plastic, as I've always said. And we're going to cover that, and then we're going to let this proof for, say, 2 to 3 hours for baguettes. That should be plenty, unless you want to do a longer fermentation. And now we're all set. It's nice and covered. You don't want any air in there during this stage. This is dough that I previously mixed. And I'm going to, this actually is 2 batches, which is fine. And let's take out some of this. And we're going to now, that's about the size of a baguette. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Now at this stage, you want to put a little flour here. And we want to form, this is very soft dough. It's very elastic, and we want to bring it together in balls like this. And I'm going to now cover this, and I'm going to let this. This will be a proof for about 15 minutes. Should be fine, and this will allow us to roll our baguettes out very easily. Now our dough's been resting for 15 minutes, and we can roll our baguettes out. So I'm going to put 2 of these aside and work on one at a time. This on the side here. You want to work with a little flour here. Spread that out. See how nice and loose that is. And we're going to roll that out. We want to make sure there's a seam there when we're rolling that out. It's a very simple thing. When you're rolling out, make sure the palm of your hands and the tips of your fingers are touching the table, or else you'll get funny looking baguettes with great big balls on the end. We call those dumbbells, and you don't want that. They look really ugly. And there's one baguette right there. All right, now I finished rolling my 3rd baguette, and I'm going to simply cover these with a towel and let them proof for about 30 to 40 minutes. like that. This is sufficient. You can actually pick them up later with your hands. You can put them on a peel and slide them onto your stone in the oven. Our bread's been proofing for about 30 or 40 minutes, and I'm going to start slashing the loaves so it can be prepared to go in the oven immediately. I'm doing this so it has a nice design and it expands on an even basis. And that's very important, or else bread would be very ugly. And that's the proper design. Start at the end, go through like that, and end at the end. Wow, here's your finished baguette. See how beautiful that is, just like a Parisian baguette. See the beautiful slashes, wonderful taste. Your family's going to enjoy them. I'm Charlie Vanover, and happy bread making.